healthcare system. In response to Vermont's Governor Peter Shumlin's recent decision to abandon his state's plan for a single-payer system, the Progressive Change Institute conducted this poll to get a feel for public opinion. Out of the 1,500 likely voters who were questioned, more than half supported single-payer, and that even included 1 out of every 4 Republicans. Although Governor Shumlin and other lawmakers say that we can't afford single-payer, we already spend way more on health care than other developed nations that have national health care systems. In fact, we would likely save money by switching to a Medicare for All type system. This new poll shows that Americans know we need to get the profit motive out of health care, and now we've got to push our lawmakers to make that happen. And finally, if New York Governor Andrew Cuomo gets his way, low-wage workers in his state will be getting a raise. At a recent press conference, Governor Cuomo proposed raising the minimum wage in his state to $11.50 in the city and $10.50 in the rest of the state. Although the proposal calls for a lower wage than Governor Cuomo called for last spring, it would still be a substantial increase from the current rate of $8.75 an hour. In order to become a reality, this pay increase would have to win approval in the New York State Legislature, which includes the Republican-controlled state Senate. Business groups are already making the Republicans' argument by warning that higher wages will cost the state jobs. However, that claim is not supported by the data in the 14 states that raised wages just in the last year alone. Those states actually saw better job growth, and the higher wages improved the lives of millions of workers. A higher minimum wage would likely have the same effects in New York State. So let's hope that New York legislators help Governor Cuomo give workers a raise. And that's the way it is for the week of January 26th, 2015. I'm Thom Hartmann on the Economic and Labor News. Back, Thom Hartmann here with you. So, as I said, I was in the middle of the night listening to BBC, trying to get back to sleep, and you can find this over at bbcworldservice.com. And it's titled the show. It's a 1-hour show. It's titled "A Richer World, But for Whom?" And it's moderated by Evan Davis of the BBC, and the people who are speaking: Christine Lagarde from the IMF, Mark Carney, governor of the Bank of England, Sir Martin Sorrell, CEO of a giant advertising company, WPP, Klaus Kleinfeld, CEO of Alcoa, the company whose asbestos arguably killed my father. Also joining are Robert Schiller, professor of economics at Yale University, and Winnie Byanyima, executive director at Oxfam International. Now, she was sort of the token liberal in the group, and she had some really interesting observations. Here's the token liberal in the group at Davos pushing back about wealth and power. Clip number 5 here.
Of course, they are producers of wealth, but the issue is about political capture, that extreme wealth takes over the process of public decision-making. The rules of the market and the rules that govern society become skewed in favor of the extremely wealthy. And that's why you get unchecked, uncontrollable rise of inequality.
And that's what's happening right now. And what's the response of the very wealthy? Take even more political power. Put $1 billion or almost $1 billion into the political process so that the voice of the very wealthy and the very powerful is absolutely not only heard, but basically drowns out all other voices. And as Henry Wallace pointed out, their goal is to combine the power that they already have in the marketplace, which is massive, with the power of government. And the power of government is supposed to restrain the power of the marketplace. And this has been our historic understanding. You balance capitalism with regulation in a mixed economy like this. But here's what Winnie Byanyima, the executive director of Oxfam, had to say at the at this meeting that was put together by BBC at Davos.
This is about shaping the rules of the market in their favor. In an ideal situation, we would have all people shaping the way the economy is governed and society is governed. That is the problem, that extreme wealth results in political capture, and then from there on, public decision-making is in the interest of the wealthy.
Right. Extreme wealth results in political capture by the extremely wealthy. And here's an example of this. Remember I mentioned Sam Brownback? He gave a 50% tax cut to the very, very rich in Kansas. Blew $1 billion hole in his budget. Susie Madrak, in an article over at Crooks and Liars titled "Lobbyists Got to See Kansas Budget Before Legislators Did," writes, and I quote, "Governor Sam Brownback's budget director used a private email account to share a working version of the government's proposed budget with two lobbyists 3 weeks before it was unveiled to lawmakers." Who were those lobbyists? Well, one was a guy named Kensinger, who was a lobbyist for the Club for Growth. This is one of the groups that the Koch brothers, I don't know if they own it or support it or which. And this, yeah, tell the lobbyists, right? So back to Davos. Here's where it got. I mean, my head was exploding by 3 o'clock in the morning. At 5 a.m., I'm emailing Shane. Clip number 4, Shane. This is where finally the guy, Evan Davis, who's running the panel, he says, okay, are the rich parasites? Are they extractors? Or are they job creators? Are they producers? And interestingly, since there were 7 people there representing the interests of the rich, and there was one person there representing the interests of the other 99% of us, and that was the woman from Oxfam International. Well, rather than tell you how it came out, I'll just play it for you. Here it is.
Let's just do a little sort of show of hands of whether you think that the top 0.1% are net contributors to the world, or whether they're net extractors. They're very clever people who invent spurious financial products and take out very high salaries. How many of you here would say they're net contributors? How many of you would say they're net extractors of value from... Okay, I would say that was about 8-1 in favor of the contributors.
8-1. Gee, in Davos, 8-1, they think that the rich are just wonderful. No. What we are looking at is an all-out assault on democracy, and not just in the United States. This is what's happening right now with Greece. Greece has finally stood up and said, because, keep in mind, the fantasy of austerity, that austerity is the solution to the problems of an economy in a crisis, that the solution is to do what they did in Greece. And what did they do in Greece? They laid off tens of thousands of government employees. They cut their healthcare programs so severely that 35,000 doctors and nurses are on unemployment. They cut unemployment benefits, just like John Boehner did for long-term unemployment here in the United States. They cut healthcare the same way that the Republicans want to do with Medicare and Medicaid. They cut the same way the conservatives want to do. They cut healthcare so that if you're in Greece, you only get health care if you're employed, and if you're unemployed, you only get it for a year, and after that, tough luck. They eliminated all free health care in Greece. Now, one of the reasons why the Syriza Party, I think, came to power is because the Syriza Party, or people aligned with the Syriza Party, were putting together free medical clinics around Greece, staffed by volunteer doctors and nurses who had been laid off. So the people are going, we see who's concerned about us. They've got 50% youth unemployment in Greece. They've got 26% core unemployment. Poverty levels have exploded. Suicide rates have exploded. People living on the streets, literally living on the streets, soup kitchens. It's the Great Depression on steroids. And the people of Greece this last weekend stood up and said no to the oligarchs. And the oligarchs are freaked out about this. Oh, my God. The people are rebelling. The people in the United States don't yet know what the oligarchs are up to. And they've got all these voices out there on the right, this vast right-wing radio network with Limbaugh and Hannity and Savage and Levin and these guys constantly trashing progressives and anything progressive and elevating conservative values as if they were the values of the average working person. And trying to say that conservative values or even Koch brother values are hating gay people when it's not. The Kochs don't care about gay people. They're libertarians. You know, promoting gun rights. I don't think the Koch brothers care about promoting gun rights. Being tough abroad, you know, an expansionist military policy. Well, no, libertarians generally don't do that. Well, why is it that the Koch brothers are supporting these kind of things and others of their ilk? Why is it that the industrialists are supporting this kind of nativism? Because it gets votes. It helps you take over the levers of political power. And what we have is the owners of industrial power in the United States, the owners of economic power in the United States, getting together, and they've been doing it in secret for 30 years, and now they're doing it in public. And I think that's a statement of how bad it's gotten in this country, that they can do it in public, and nobody except Bernie Sanders is standing up going, whoa, wait a minute. And saying, we're not satisfied with just economic power. We're not satisfied with making billions and billions of dollars. We're not satisfied with you know, and by the way, that little show of hands you just heard from the BBC, he said that the 0.01%, the 0.01%, the 1/100th of 1%, the really rich. They're not happy with just having economic power. They want political power as well. Why would they want political power? Because political power is the only thing that constrains or restrains economic power. The only way that the average person can have any say in the political sphere or in the economic sphere is to have political power. And the Koch brothers and the right-wing machine and Fox News, owned by two billionaires, Prince Alawid and Rupert Murdoch, the Saudi prince and Rupert Murdoch, and this political system run by two billionaires, David and Charles Koch. And, you know, all these networks around the United States basically owned and run by billionaires or giant corporations that make billionaires. Their goal is to take political power in the United States the way that they have by and large in Europe. I mean, this whole austerity thing that was pushed by the guy who invented Reaganomics, as Greg Palast pointed out on this show last week, the guy who invented the idea of Reaganomics, invented the idea of austerity in Europe. What is it? It's destroy the middle class, destroy the working class, and create a country that is safe for the oligarchs. I would submit to you, and in fact, if I was sitting down with David and Charles Koch, I would submit to them. You don't want to be a rich man in a poor country, although your policies are heading us in that direction. I mean, in Greece, they've got tuberculosis rates have doubled because there's no health care system anymore.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
How can even the rich avoid things like tuberculosis? Well, maybe if you don't hang out with the average person, I guess that's it. Welcome back. Henry in Orchard Park, New York, watching on Free Speech TV. Hey, Henry, you wanted to talk about this?
Yes, Tom. I want to talk a little bit about, what you've been talking about today, what you were talking about yesterday with the FDR speeches, you know, the quotes from Henry Wallace, and the whole talk about fascism. I mean, your show originates from Washington, D.C. I mean, you've got the World War II memorial there. Right. And it's honoring the 16 million Americans who served during World War II. And the 417,000 who died fighting against the kind of country that today's Republican Party here is trying to turn this one into. I mean, if you think about it, and if you look at the...
Well, hang on just a second, Henry. The Republican Party